remember when I met you, you're already into leg locks. Dean Lister won a world championship with them actually in Abu Dhabi, right?
That's
He finished
correct.
with a leg lock.
He won 2 ADCCs
with a leg lock.
Not all by leg lock. Dean had a good overall game. He wasn't just a leg lock guy. But his most well-known victories against his toughest opponents mostly came from leg lock.
And then there was a quantum leap forward in leg locks that I saw you go through. Like there was your time before we met, you're already doing leg locks. Then when we met you, you were doing leg locks, but we were heavy into MMA techniques and tactics. And then after that, after George retired, or just before, right around that time, there was a quantum leap in your game in leg locks, I noticed. And the DDS.
Not so much a quantum leap in the game as a quantum leap in the recognition and among my students. There's a simple reason for this. I was mostly known prior to the squad as someone associated with you and George, who would help Tristar athletes in their grappling. That's mostly what I was known for. Then that switched when Chris Weidman rose to prominence. It was Tristar and Chris Weidman, and then George retired. Chris moved away to open up his own gym in Long Island, and for the first time, I had no MMA students, and a group of very talented young men, Eddie Cummings, Gary Tonin, and Gordon Ryan. They were all very, very young in those days. I think Eddie came in as a blue belt. Gary, I think, was a brown belt, and Gordon was a blue belt. And they came in. They brought also with them Gordon's younger brother, Nicky, who I believe was around 13 years old at that time. And for the first time, I had students who were training with me 7 days a week, 2 or 3 times a day. Now, with George and yourself, it was a question of me going to Montreal or you coming to New York. So we would see each other like once a month. Now, the leg lock game is a very subtle game. The difference between winning and losing with a leg lock is very, very fine. And so this is not something you're going to learn by doing it once a month. In addition, you and I both have a shared philosophy of if it's not broke, don't fix it. George was already winning so well with a top pressure game based around his double leg and shoot blocks that it would have been foolish to teach him a bottom leg lock game. It would have been a distraction for him rather than a benefit. But with these youngsters, I got to work with them 7 days a week, twice a day.
And MMA, you have to learn so many things. And there's so many moving parts to leg locks. Like if you want to learn leg locks, guys, you gotta do an intensive leg lock journey.
It's like an immersion thing.
You have to immerse yourself because there are a lot of details, and you need 5 things to go right. As in an armbar, you need 3 things to go right. In a basic leg lock, you need 5 things to go right. And when you get more sophisticated, you need 6, 7, 8 things to go right. And to the guy who's doing them every day, it's easy to do. But to an MMA guy who's learning so many other skills, that extra 2, 3 elements eats up time. It eats up practice time. So I think
it wasn't like George needed it. He was already winning.
Exactly. So. It wasn't super crucial for him.
Yeah. Interestingly, George did pull one beautiful Ashigurami in a fight. He never got any recognition for it.
Against Hardy, when he slipped off his back. He also went into Josh,
Koscheck.
Koscheck's legs also. He went for a straight foot. Yeah. Okay, we're just going to finish up. We're doing a podcast. We'll catch up with you guys. All right? Okay, but we're here for a fight, guys, today. So, again, finally, we're working together again. Really excited about that. But like I wanted to mention, there was a time, I remember training with Eddie Cummings. And, you know, John teaches everything from Dars to leg lock. He always taught everything. You never dismissed any submission. Like, you had a holistic game. Like, for instance, like Marcelo Garcia, he used to tell, I've trained with him a couple of times. He used to tell me, don't do leg locks. So like, it's not really a good idea. It doesn't really work on everybody. He had a philosophy where if it doesn't work on everybody, I don't want to do that submission. He had a set of submissions he really believed in, and he kind of didn't practice the others. You had a very different approach. It was like know every sub, right? I mean, you emphasize knowing every single major sub.
I think there's wisdom to what Marcelo said. I'm not saying it's the wrong way of doing things. He was obviously incredibly successful with it. I do believe in the idea of specialization and understand that ultimately, at the end of the day, I teach basically 6 families of submission holds.
Hmm.
Now, that's not a huge number, but the number of variations within each is huge. What I do believe is that if you look at, say, for example, Marcelo's career, almost all of his losses came to moves which he refused to teach.
The darts from Murillo.
Yeah.
It's from Braulio.
No, from Robert Drysdale.
But he also got darts from Braulio, if I remember correctly.
No, that was from the rear neck. He got an Ezekiel from the back.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
But again, it was a shoulder strangle.
Shoulder strangle. Okay.
He always said you should never incorporate the shoulder into
even
strangles.
Katagatami. He didn't want Katagatami.
Yeah.
Of course, he's a brilliant guy. Nothing negative to say about Marcelo. He's one of the greatest of all time, no doubt whatsoever. We're just comparing philosophies.
He also said that Kimura was not a move that should be studied in detail.
Yeah.
And he was finished by Kimura.
He was finished by Kimura by Jacare.
Yeah.
I believe, yes.
I believe the general pattern in grappling is that when you tend to dismiss moves, you'll be the one that ends up getting finished by them.
And one of your students, Gary Tonin, finished, what's his name again? Dylan Dennis by leg lock.
Yes. Yeah.
Because think about it, imagine you're in a practice room and nobody does leg locks.
It's going to be hard to
Then you go in competition and you meet a leg locker.
Yeah.
I tell my students, get to purple belt. After purple belt, you can become specialized. I don't know if you agree with this, but like I make my students do armbar, triangle, omoplata, like do everything. Don't specialize until you get to purple belt. If you want to say, okay, I'm a leg locker, wait till you get to purple belt. Don't start as a blue belt and be a leg locker, because quick thought experiment. If, let's say, for instance, Gordon Ryan went to train with Marcelo instead of you, and he didn't go through a leg lock era, I don't think he would have been as great as he is. Why? Because he would have played butterfly guard, and the guys he was fighting against already had 10 years more butterfly guard experience than him.
Yeah.
Whereas when you taught him an Ashigarami game, nobody knew that game. We'll get to that later, because I still want to get back to the leg lock leap, quantum leap that I feel happened in the Renzo Gracie Academy. I'll share you with you my experience, because I saw a huge contrast. Yes, there was always leg locks, but there was a period where there was a complete change, and the game was now different, especially lifting your opponent up from on top of you and then switching to a cross ashi. I've never seen it before until I saw you guys one day doing it at Henzo's, and I had no idea what to do against it. And I feel like a lot of the competitors didn't know either. Like when I see the DDS, your squad go up against these guys, they had no idea what to do. They didn't have 5-10 years of experience with this. They've never seen it before. It was novel, and it was catching a lot of people off guard. And I felt if Gordon didn't have that, he maybe wouldn't have had the time to develop other parts of his game that kept him on top. But he got on top by knowing something. Very sophisticated, in my opinion. Now, I'll tell you guys why, okay? I remember rolling with Eddie Cummings before, in my opinion, there was this overnight quantum leap in leg lock methods, because I was doing leg locks with you. And then I remember one time you put me with Eddie Cummings, and I was like, oh, not Eddie, it's going to be an easy round for me, because I had rolled with him previous. Remember, I met Eddie when he was very early in his career. Like, I just kind of rolled with him. Nice guy, very intelligent guy, sweet guy. But at that time, when I first rolled with him, he wasn't experienced. The second time I rolled with him, it was like maybe 6 months or a year later, not more than a year later, I came back to roll. And I rolled with Eddie, and he just crushed me with leg locks.
Yeah.
And I was like surprised, because I had no idea what he was doing. And he was doing stuff like didn't exist a year ago. And I know he was spending like 8 hours a day with you.
Didn't exist in Eddie, because Eddie came in fairly early in his development.
Right, but you also had tweaked the game quite a bit. You had like lifting a guy up and going cross ashi. I mean, that was fairly new from that.
There were a bunch of core insights that changed the game. One of them was that I was a very early advocate of kani basami, the scissor takedown into leg locks from standing position. Whenever Renzo would put me and match me against wrestlers in the standing position, I would use that as a means of taking a standing game immediately down to the ground.
For those of you who don't know, it's like a flying scissor.
It's the flying
you jump
scissor.
into a leg lock from standing position. You jump into a leg lock. It's considered illegal now.
It's illegal in most styles except for professional grappling and MMA.
Gary won with it in Abu Dhabi as well. Did it beautifully.
It's a fantastic move in terms of effectiveness. However, it is also a very dangerous move that has an extremely high injury rate associated with it. And in a classroom setting, so many people were injured by it that I had to ban it as a technique in class.
From standing position.
From standing position. Why? Because when you're standing, you're bearing weight on the leg, and the movement into Kani Basami, if you miscalculate time and distance, you can crash with 100% of your body weight into your training partner's knee and destroy their knee by accident.
You blow the ACL. You destroy the guy's career.
So we couldn't use it in the standing position. And in a crowded room, 100 people in every class, it's inevitable that you're going to have disasters every day in training. So a question began to emerge: would there be a safe way of employing Kani Basami? The move works, but it's too damn dangerous for training. And the answer was yes, from bottom position. If you can elevate someone, because you are underneath them, their leg is not bearing weight at the time you enter, so there's no danger of injury. But you get the same scissor technique into your training partner's legs from bottom position. So you had all the virtues of Kani Basami: the control of a cross-arch position, the complete control between the knee and the hip, and the safety of a butterfly guard sweep. And so it was the perfect marriage and enabled students to be able to easily get underneath opponent's body weight using butterfly guard, elevate them, and go into this cross-arch position.
And it's amazing because at that time, you were neighbors with Marcelo. And in my opinion, at that time, no-gi jiu-jitsu, the best place in the world was Manhattan to train. There's no doubt. He was developing butterfly guard. You were developing butterfly guard literally in the same neighborhood. And your butterfly guards were so different.
His was a positional butterfly guard.
Right.
Mine was a submission butterfly guard.
Right.
Yeah.
But yours would end up in a sweep or submission as well, because if you get the Kani Basami, you're going to sweep.
Yeah. The second big insight, this is where Faraz is really going. He's saying, like, what changed in that time? The second critical insight was the idea of double trouble. That 90% of resistance to any given leg lock comes from the other leg. And so if you can control both legs, the degree of control which an athlete can exert over the other person is exponentially higher. Most people, when they get into a leg lock position, only focus on the leg inside their Ashigurami. My philosophy was control the other leg. The leg that's inside your Ashigurami can take care of itself later. So instead of leg locks being a speed-based game where you get to a leg and try and finish as fast as possible, it switched to become a control-based game where my students could control both legs for extended periods of time and turn an Ashigurami type position into a situation where you had the same kind of control that you would from side control or mount position or north-south. When you can dictate time and pressure, you're going to win in the sport of jiu-jitsu. If you're rushing for your submissions, you might win one, you might lose one. But when you can control people over time in ways that lead into submission, you're going to be damn good at this sport. And that was the major difference that you felt as time went by. That you were getting stuck in positions where you're in cross-arch, both legs are laced together, and you just feel like...
I was going from on top, a position I love, to my legs wrapped up together and on my hips, no longer putting weight on my opponent, which was, I've never seen entries like that until now. Now I do them religiously. Now I'm on board. Like I love the idea. And if you get to that Kani Basami position, it doesn't matter how hard he sprawls, it doesn't matter how strong they are. It's irrelevant. They've been, now the playing field is level. Actually, it's in your favor because you also have the inside heel hook. One mistake on their part and their knee is gone. It was very frightening, very scary type of guard to even attempt to pass, because if you get lifted up, they're underneath you, and it was incredible. But the other incredible, I find, major leap that the Death Squad did. By the way, I also want to talk about the history of the Death Squad after this.